bras can be really detrimental. So when you can, don't wear one. Let yourself kind of move around and never wear the underwire super tight ones.
Welcome to Wellness, your ultimate guide to unlocking your full human potential through biohacking. I'm your host, Ashley Daly. I'm a certified sports nutrition coach, former personal trainer, and Pilates instructor, and I have a degree in kinesiology. My goal is to help you improve and elevate the quality of your life. When you leave a review, it makes a positive difference. Whether you're listening on Spotify, watching on YouTube, or listening on any other streaming app, it helps listeners just like you find this hidden health information faster. If you're into health optimization, you know anything organic is better for you, and wine is no exception. Wine is taxed as alcohol, not food, which means producers aren't required to disclose ingredients or even basic nutritional facts. Dry Farm Wines is an exclusive wine club which brings you natural organic wine sourced from farms across Europe who practice regenerative farming. All wines are fully fermented and contain less than 1 gram of sugar per liter. When you sign up for Dry Farm Wines, they'll throw in an extra bottle for just 1 penny on your first order. That's only a penny for a beautiful, natural, biodynamic, regenerative wine. Visit dryfarmwines.com/Ashley Daly. Today's guest is Deanne Richter, a registered nurse and coach at Breast Cancer Conqueror. Breast Cancer Conqueror includes a 7 essential system, which was created by Dr. V, or Dr. Veronique Desaulniers. This 7 essentials system is the reason Dr. V herself overcame breast cancer twice. Deanne works alongside Dr. V to help both men and women navigate this powerful system, combining years as a surgical trauma nurse with her lifelong passion for natural healing. Growing up in her grandmother's Atlanta health food store, she was immersed in natural medicine early on, an experience which shaped her balanced, integrative approach to care. Today, she brings both conventional medical knowledge and holistic wisdom to guide people through one of life's hardest journeys. In this episode, we'll discuss both conventional and non-conventional options for beating breast cancer. And this is a reminder that you are powerful. You are stronger, wiser, and capable of more than you know. If you're looking to learn more straight away before we even dive into this conversation, visit breastcancerconqueror.com. Deanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here because I've done a lot of research and I feel like, isn't there a heartbreaking statistic that says 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime?
I think it's actually getting lower than that. I've heard lower numbers. I've heard 1 in 5 recently. So yeah, it's definitely on the uprise, not just for women, but for men as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's also probably a good myth to break too, which we'll definitely get into. So let's start high level before we go down. So can you give us a little bit of your background, share your story with my listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in nursing. I'm a nurse, registered nurse by background. But I've been working with Dr. V and Breast Cancer Conqueror now for almost a decade, for close to 10 years. I work as a health coach with women who have breast cancer. We've also worked with people with other types of cancer. So it's not just to breast cancer, but that's the majority of our group is definitely breast cancer. So I help women with things like lifestyle changes, herbs, supplements, testing suggestions, things they can do, whether they're taking a completely natural approach or if they're choosing to integrate some traditional medicine as well. We help them regardless. So that's what I've been doing for 10 years. I really enjoy supporting women like that.
Oh, I love hearing that. And I also love the energy and enthusiasm that you bring because I feel like a lot of times the stories that you hear are when people are diagnosed, they're so scared and they don't know where to start. But that's where you come in.
That's where we hope to come in. Absolutely.
Can you give us an overview or some interventions, what to expect when we find you? Because I know with one of my friends who was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was like, here's a book and here's some supplements. And she said everyone did that. And it was really overwhelming for her. So can you tell us, where do we start?
Yeah, Dr. V she put together the 7 essentials. That's what she calls them. It's in her book as well. And so it's kind of meant to be a step-by-step guide of kind of how to go through a healing journey like this. Essential number 1 is to let food be your medicine. So that's always a good place for people to start. We always think about our food that we're eating and how beneficial and foundational that is. Number 2 is to reduce your toxic exposure. So you're working on minimizing your exposures there. And my key with that is it's not eliminate, it's reduce. We live in a toxic world. We can't live in a non-toxic world. It just is what it is. Our earth is toxic. So we're doing our best to reduce and protect ourselves where possible. Essential number 3 is to balance your energy. So especially with cancer and breast cancer, that's things like hormone balancing, making sure you're methylizing your hormones appropriately, chiropractic care, acupuncture, things like that. Essential number 4 is to heal your emotions. Breast cancer is an emotional disease, especially breast cancer, but all diseases have some emotion ties to emotions. So we're working on making sure you don't have any traumas that are unresolved, working on, stress management, which is very important as well. Number 5 is to embrace biological dentistry. Your mouth is the gateway to your health. Yeah, so you have to take care of that. I know I saw your face light up. Your mouth is the gateway to your health. So, a big piece of that is definitely getting rid of any silver amalgams or metal mercury amalgams you may have in your mouth. But root canals can also be an issue, cavitations, gum disease, so on and so forth. Making sure you're working with a good biological dentist to take care of that. Essential number 6 is what you said your friend mentioned. It's repair with therapeutic herbs and supplements. That's oftentimes the first place people think. If you Google search cancer herbs, a million things are going to pop up. So there could be a lot of information to filter through. So something we do is try to help people figure out the right supplementation plan that's right for them as an individual. And then the last one is essential number 7, which is to adopt early detection and testing. So a saying that we say all the time is test, don't guess. We're not in the business of guessing if something is working. Test, have a baseline, do a program, follow up on that testing, see if you're seeing the results you need, and if not, switch it up. So that's where we talk about all the different types of testing someone can take. So it's definitely a step-by-step process. Dr. V will say it's a marathon, not a race, and that's so true. So for someone who's newly diagnosed, take a break, take a nice big deep breath, just take it step by step, gather the information, test and reassess.
I also love that there's 7 steps because I feel like 7 is a lucky number. And I love what you say about take a deep breath, because it's not like the cancer showed up the day that you went and got tested. It's been cultivating, manifesting, your lifestyle habits have brought it on, or what you said, the toxic earth that we live in. Part of my little Instagram handle is I live a low tox lifestyle because there are toxins everywhere.
Yeah, there's no tox, right? Absolutely. Yeah, and far too often I hear people thinking about a cancer diagnosis like it's an emergency. To your point, it's not a heart attack. It's not like you have to rush to the emergency room and do something right here, right now. There are situations, of course, maybe there's things that are, if it's blocking something or causing lots of pain, there may be situations where it's more of an emergency. But for the most part, you have time to kind of gather the information you need to make an informed decision. So I really encourage people to do that. It may seem scary, but just take a step back, take a nice big deep breath, talk to people who can help you with different options, and gather all that information first before moving forward.
You had mentioned Dr. D a couple times. Who is Dr. D? Where did these 7 steps come from?
Yeah, she's my mother-in-law to start with. That's what we call each other. So she's my mother-in-law. Dr. Veronique Desaulniers is her name. So she has dealt with 2 breast cancer healing journeys. So and she's done both of them naturally. So she wrote a book called Heal Breast Cancer Naturally. Her first healing journey is when she kind of formulated and put together the 7 essentials that I just went through. And then in her second, her reoccurrence, she found new things, re-fine-tuned things to get, up to date. So she's been doing this for over 40 years now, I think, working in this industry and talking with people about it and coaching. And I came on board with her about 10 years ago.
That's so sweet. And I love the nickname.
Yeah.
Was there a catalyst or a reason that made you want to get into breast cancer prevention?
Yeah, this starts back in my childhood, honestly, with herbal medications and natural medicine. My grandmother owned multiple health food stores in Georgia. I grew up around the Atlanta area. So she owned health food stores. And as a little girl, I would go into her health food store with her. I always joke and say it was a little bit of child labor, but we're going to get away with that. It's okay. She would have me stocking shelves and, I was like organizing the kombuchas and, organizing all these different health things. And I really loved it. I loved being in that store. It was so fun. And so then when I knew I wanted to be a nurse from a very young age, knew I wanted to help people. When I started going through nursing school, I was working at her health food store as my job, as a way to support myself through nursing school. And so I had a really unique experience of, while I was learning the traditional approaches to things, I was learning from the people in the health food store some of the alternative approaches to things. So it was this really unique kind of, I would learn about something, I would talk with my clients about it, and they'd be like, well, that herb helps too. So I was getting this like dual education. And that's something that I've kind of brought with me with this job as well, is I really have a love of the balance of integrating things. There's times and places for traditional intervention. There's times and places for natural herbs and supplements to help support. And so that kind of early childhood experience of growing up in that health food store really had a big impact on me.
I think that's one of my favorite things about your coaching program is I feel like when you go to the hospital, they want to put you on chemo, they want to put you on these things. That's their protocol. And then when you visit a naturopath, they have these other ideas, and it can feel very overwhelming. So tell me, what is someone supposed to do? What route are they supposed to choose?
Oh, that's so individualized. There is no right way to heal. That's what I always say. There is no one way to heal. There's many ways to heal. There's a lot of experience of people who have healed completely naturally. There's a lot of experiences of people who have healed completely with traditional medicine. And there's a big shift these days into integrative care. Actually, a recent study, it was in 2017, showed that 73% of people who are undergoing breast cancer care are also using complementary medicine. Not only using, but they actually had some type of benefit from their complementary medicine. 73%, that's really big. That's a huge shift. So there is no right way. I always tell my clients your gut feeling is a really important feeling. Obviously, research and looking at the research, talking with your doctors, talking with your coaches, with your naturopaths to hear what their suggestions are. But you are the one in control. It's your body. You get to choose how you want to heal. And with that comes some open-mindedness as well. If you're someone who is very just mindset on, I'm going to follow my doctor's suggestions, you might need to work on being a little open-minded about some of the natural things you can support yourself while doing that. Or vice versa, if you're very set on natural things, there may be a time and place when you decide, some traditional medicine might actually help me here. I need to be open-minded about that. So there's no one size fits all. There's no one path. It's very individualized to each person. And that's where working with someone like a coach or a naturopath who kind of understands you as an individual a little bit more and isn't doing such a cookie cutter box approach might kind of help you to figure out what those other options are.
So let's start with some of those natural remedies, because that's a lot of what this show is about, is being sovereign and being in charge of your own health.
Yeah, some of my favorites are going to be those baselines. So broccoli sprouts are amazing. And that's not only eating broccoli sprouts, but you can also supplement with sulforaphane supplements. I call it superhero sulforaphane for a reason. It does just about everything. It has been shown to be able to heal breast cancer stem cells in studies. It also can help with hormone methylation, liver detoxification, DNA protection. It has a lot of benefits. So sulforaphane from broccoli sprouts would be a really big one. I would also say, as simple as it sounds, vitamin D. Studies show people with high levels of vitamin D, circulating vitamin D, lower risk of breast cancer, do better with their treatments. So your goal there is to try to get your vitamin D level between 80 to 100. Curcumin, it's a basic, we all know about it. It's very anti-inflammatory, also has anti-cancer properties and anti-breast cancer stem cell properties. Modified Citrus Pectin is a really big one as well. So citrus pectin is that white fuzzy part on the inside of your limes and lemons and oranges. This has been modified, but it's a modified citrus pectin. The best company is Econugenics. That's what we typically recommend to our clients. It comes in a powdered form or in a chewable tablet or a capsule form. It's so easy to take. But modified citrus pectin does a lot of things. First of all, it's very helpful for reducing inflammation. It's helpful for heavy metal detoxification. And it also upregulates a gene called the P53 gene, which is a tumor suppressor gene. So our P53 genes should be working well, but most of us, because of that toxic world we live in, most of us are not functioning very well with that P53 gene. So this tries to help upregulate that gene that's supposed to go out and look and find tumors, try to kill those tumors. So it helps to upregulate that gene. And then finally, it also, for lack of better words, it takes the stickiness away from cancer cells. So cancer cells tend to be a little sticky. That's how they kind of go to different places in the body and stick and coagulate. This kind of tries to take that stickiness away, making them less likely to do that. So modified citrus pectin would be a big one as well.
That's really helpful. I also haven't mentioned this on the show before, but one of my favorite neurosurgeons, Jack Cruz, he has a theory that sometimes potentially why people get breast cancer is because they never expose their breasts to the sun.
Oh,
so
sure.
Speaking of vitamin D, he says, if you can, and not being, a pervert where you can,
Right.
if you're a female, but like getting your breasts into the sun. Have you heard of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely heard of that. It's not just the vitamin D, but sunlight has that full spectrum sunlight as well, right? So that's so healing. So we definitely recommend that to our clients, like you said, in an appropriate manner, but even people who have healed from surgery, once that scar is totally healed, definitely don't get out there before that. But once that scar is totally healed, a little bit of sunlight, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of sunlight can help with some of that healing of that tissue. I've definitely heard that before. Yeah.
Okay. Whew. Okay, cool. I'm glad we get to discuss that.
And similar idea too is bras, right? We know bras can be really detrimental. So
Yes.
when you can, don't wear one. Let yourself kind of move around and never wear the underwire super tight ones, even in, public. It's okay for them to hang a little lower. We don't have to be all the way up to our chin.
You're speaking my language. This is why I love having podcasts, because no one can see that I'm not wearing a bra.
That's perfect. Exactly.
But tell us, why should we avoid wearing bras?
Yeah, it's all about lymphatic flow. There's a lot of lymph nodes that are involved in the breast tissue, and especially in your underarms as well. And that's a double hitter because we tend to wear bras and antiperspirants, right? So not only are we compressing those lymph nodes and not letting them move, but then we're also clogging our pores and our lymph nodes up with aluminum to keep them from being able to drain. So letting that breast tissue move really helps to move that fluid out of the breast tissue into the underarm lymph nodes. And then, of course, you can wear sometimes essential oils or things like that, but definitely don't wear antiperspirants. That lets your body sweat the way it was naturally supposed to, so you detoxify that breast tissue better.
Such good actionable advice. Okay, so we've gone through some low-hanging fruit for supplements and not wearing bras. What should we not be consuming or wearing or doing?
A big one that's really important to know about right now is electromagnetic frequencies, EMFs. Think about our cell phones, our computers, our TVs, our laptops. Electromagnetic frequencies really mess with your cell's ability to replicate, and they can also increase your risk of cancer. They're considered a group 2 carcinogen. They're considered very, very high on the carcinogen list. So it's known that they can increase your risk of cancer. So protecting yourself from EMFs. Now, this is a big piece where reduce, not eliminate, comes into play, right? Because we live in a world where most of us can't live without a cell phone or a laptop. I work from my computer all day long. Our cars have computers in them now, right? So we can't get rid of that type of exposure, but reducing as much as possible and then protecting yourself when you can. So reducing means don't carry your cell phone in your bra. Never carry your cell phone in your bra. Try to keep that cell phone kind of away from you as much as possible, from your physical body. If you can at night, turn your Wi-Fi off. You're not surfing the internet at night. So while you're sleeping, give yourself that nice 8 hours of no Wi-Fi time. Turn your phone on airplane mode a few times through the day, just to give yourself a break. And then you can also consider companies like Gia. Gia is one of Dr. V's favorites. They make protective stickers, things you can put on your laptops and cell phones that help to minimize the oxidative stress that those EMFs might cause. So that's a really big one. And then we also always say protect your home, right? So we may not be in control of the things that go on around us or on a worldwide scale, but your yard, your home, you're usually mostly in control of the things that come in and out of that. So try your best to use non-toxic things inside your home. A really great resource is EWG, Environmental Working Group. So they have a really great app that you can download. You can take it to the store with you. You can scan the QR code of a product and see how toxic it is, and then try your best to kind of find things that are helpful to replace. And with that, it's another step-by-step process. So sometimes my clients will get overwhelmed and think, okay, well, I've got to throw away all of my products. I have to start from scratch. And you don't always have to go about it that way. You can do a pantry swap. When you run out of something, replace it with something non-toxic. And that might be a little bit more like bite-sized pieces. Every little change you make is going to make a big difference.
That's really helpful. And I love that you mentioned EWG. That was one of my favorite resources when I started on my non-toxic journey for beauty care. I also put together a really comprehensive free clean beauty guide because I've seen so many influencers who unfortunately I just feel like have sold out. And you can see the ingredients and I'm like, if people knew how to read ingredients, they would know that this is toxic. And so part of my beauty list has a list from A to Z of ingredients that you should avoid.
Oh, nice. That's wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Some things, it's funny too, the way labeling works these days. Just because the color is green doesn't actually make it clean, right? You have to actually read those ingredients.
Yes. I like what you had also mentioned about sleep, Deanne. And I was wondering, is there a best position to sleep? Is it not healthy for our breasts if we're stomach sleepers? Should we try to be more side or back sleepers?
I've never really seen any necessarily any studies that specifically say you have to sleep a certain way. So not that I'm aware of. I'd be interested to learn if that's true. The important thing with sleep obviously is your sleep quality. So I think with sleep, there's always this big pro versus con thing. If sleeping on your stomach makes your sleep quality really good, then if there are any cons to sleep on your stomach, that might outweigh it. So if you're sleeping good, you're having good restful sleep, key is 7 to 8 hours. You don't want to sleep too little and you don't want to sleep too much either. Interestingly, some studies show that people who sleep over 9 hours a day have a higher risk of breast cancer. So now we don't know cofactors. That could also be that they're inactive during the day or they're sleeping a lot because they're not actually moving their body a lot. But still, that key seems to be between that 7 to 8 hours. So yeah, I don't know about any positions you'd have to avoid while sleeping. As long as your quality is good, that's what I'm looking for with my clients.
Yes. Okay, good. And I also really liked what you said about not putting your phone in your sports bra. My friend, she was on my show. She is a very well-renowned pain physician, but she said when she would go to events, she would put her phone right in her bra. And she said that's how she thinks she ended up with breast cancer. So are there any other maybe no-brainers that maybe we haven't thought about where we would go, oh, okay, I guess I shouldn't run with my phone in my bra and go for a lacy thing instead? Is there any other kind of simple swaps that we can introduce?
Let me think. I don't actually know of any. I think that might be, those seem like the good low-hanging fruits.
Okay. Well, then let's go into testing. Can you walk us through some tests?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So for prevention of breast cancer, testing is really important. I already mentioned vitamin D. So that's one of the big ones, right? We know we want our vitamin D levels to be between 80 to 100. So testing your vitamin D level on a regular basis. If it's low, supplement to get it back up to that higher level. Thermography is another really interesting test you can consider. So thermography uses an infrared camera that takes a picture of the breasts, helps to look for signs of inflammation within that breast tissue. So we know inflammation is the root cause of all kinds of diseases, especially breast cancer. So realistically, we don't want that breast tissue to look really hot. We also don't want one breast to look hotter than the other breast. They should really be pretty symmetric. So thermography can be a really early detecting test to look for early signs of problems before they actually turn into a real problem. Hormone methylation, that's big for all women. Again, we live in a toxic world. As careful as we try to be, we're unfortunately going to be exposed to those chemical estrogens and xenoestrogens. They're just all around us. So we want to make sure that our body is equipped to metabolize or process those hormones as well as possible. And then when we're methylizing them, we want to make sure we're methylizing them into a protective pathway rather than an aggressive pathway. So a great test I like to recommend is called the Dutch test, DUTCH, the Dutch test, good estrogen methylation test to consider. And also inflammatory markers. This is really simple blood work we can all do. It comes from Dr. Nisha Winters, who I love. I don't know if you've ever listened to her or I talked with her. She's amazing. But those inflammatory markers, she's termed them the trifecta, but that highly sensitive CRP, the LDH, the ESR, and then Dr. B likes to add a fourth for our women, the homocysteine. So that homocysteine is also an inflammatory marker, but also has some ties with hormone methylation again, which kind of fits well for our clients. So keeping tabs on those inflammation markers, whether you are on a healing journey with breast cancer or if you're trying to prevent, would be really important. We want to make sure we keep that inflammation nice and low.
Are these tests that you would recommend getting done every year regardless?
Personally, I try to do them yearly. Yeah, and some of them you may end up doing more often. Like let's say for an example, your vitamin D is really low. Don't wait till next year to test it again, right? Supplement and try to get it to that high level and retest to make sure you get it there. But yeah, I would say at least yearly for most people who are trying to be on a preventative journey would be a good thing to consider.
Now, one of the tests we didn't talk about was a genetic test. And I have a friend whose sister was going to get tested to see if she had a specific gene that would, I don't know the right word for this, that would potentially set her up for breast cancer. And she was terrified to find out if she had it. And I thought, well, just because you have the gene doesn't mean you're going to get it. So can you tell listeners, what is that gene and what kind of hope do we have?
Probably she was looking at the BRCA gene, right? So the BRCA gene is something that's very familial. It typically can be passed down from mothers to daughters. The BRCA gene, we oftentimes think of it as a bad thing, but we actually want a good BRCA gene. So what people are testing for is a deficit in the BRCA gene. BRCA is a protective gene. It helps, again, it's a tumor suppressor gene. So it helps the body look for and suppress tumors. People who have the BRCA gene mutation, that gene isn't working properly. So it actually then may potentially increase your risk of breast cancers. But you're totally right. Your DNA is not your destiny. That's how we like to put it. There's an entire line of study called epigenetics, which is the study of how environmental factors, toxins, food, supplements can actually change our gene expression, and our genes can change. So that's really important to follow up on. Actually, in the line of testing, there is a test called the nutrition genome test. That is a DNA test, so it looks at your genetic code, but then it tells you the foods and nutrients that help support your genetic strengths and weaknesses. So it's basically an epigenetics test, telling you what things you can do to eat or supplement with that might actually help upregulate or downregulate, depending on what you need, certain gene factors. So yeah, it's definitely not your destiny. You can make lifestyle changes that can alter those factors.
Okay. And you had also mentioned thermography, which I had only recently heard of in the last few years. Can you weigh in on some pros and cons of thermography and mammograms?
It's important to know they don't do the same thing, right? A mammography is looking for a problem once it's already arose. All mammography is really doing is looking for a lump. It's looking for an already present cancerous lump in the body. And it's not diagnostic. Mammography is not a diagnostic test for breast cancer. It's just one of the screening tools. But because of that, mammography is definitely not considered preventative, right? It's not going to say, hey, this breast is okay right now, but it looks like something's happening. It's going to say, we found something. So it's not a preventative test by any means. Thermography, on the other hand, as I mentioned, is actually looking for early signs of changes in the breast tissue. So it's looking for increased angiogenesis, which is blood supply. It's looking for inflammation. It can also interestingly tell if you have lymphatic congestion in your underarms. It can look for issues with blockages in your veins and arteries. It actually can look for a lot of arthritis in your joints if you choose to do a full body. It can find and look for signs and early signs of a lot of different things. But thermography, for that reason, can be considered really preventative, because if you find, you find some changes in a breast. Myself personally, when I first started working with Dr. V, one of my breasts was much hotter than the other. Not diagnosed of cancer, it didn't mean I have cancer, but it was an early sign that if I let things keep going, that could have potentially turned into a problem later on. So then by implementing 7 essentials, looking on my food, decreasing toxins, supplements, so on and so forth, over time, that thermography cleared up. The breasts are both, thankfully, nice, both blue and clear and good. So it's an early preventative test, whereas mammography is not going to be preventative at all. It's really just looking for something once there's already a problem. One of the concerns with mammography that people need to weigh the pros and cons with is that mammography does have the big squeeze, right? It's going to squeeze that breast tissue. And if there is a cancerous lump in that breast tissue, you run the risk of potentially allowing some cells to escape from that cancerous lump. Some people feel that may release cancer cells into the bloodstream. And another issue, of course, is radiation. And interestingly, the type of radiation used with mammography is called a low energy radiation, which you would think is better, but actually low energy radiation is more likely to cause DNA mutations. So that's how mammography over time can potentially actually increase the risk of breast cancer development, because you're putting that low energy radiation into those breast cells. So there's definitely pros and cons. You just have to weigh the pros and cons of both. I do have some clients who continue to implement mammography in their healing journey as a preventative measure, just to look and see. But I have a lot of people who feel like those cons outweigh it, and they tend to use things like thermography or ultrasounds to kind of monitor that breast tissue as much as possible.
That was going to be my next question. What about ultrasounds?
Yeah, absolutely. Same idea with mammography. Ultrasound is not really a preventative test, but it's going to look for signs of something already there. But that's great to monitor breast tissue. Ultrasounds can, again, not a diagnostic test, but they can look at physical differences that may help someone determine, a radiologist determine if something is a cyst, like a fluid-filled benign cyst, or if it's more dense and solid, that might be more evidence of cancer. So again, not diagnostic. So no one's going to diagnose breast cancer based off of an ultrasound, but it does help put tools into your toolbox where you can make a conclusion yourself if you feel like you feel comfortable with it.
I also have another question that goes along with a story. So my friend with breast cancer said that when she had, and I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, Deanne, but she said when she went in to have her breast cut to have a section of the tumor taken out, she said she wished she would have done that on the same day that she had the mammogram, or the same day that she did everything, because she said the more interference you have, the more chance there is for the cancer to spread. So part of my story goes with my question is that the right kind of thinking, or do you have any other kind of advice if someone has to go in for a diagnostic sample?
Yeah, so biopsies, that is unfortunately, yeah, no, you're great. That is unfortunately strictly the only diagnostic tool for breast cancer, or any cancer for that matter. So scans are not going to be 100%. Ultrasound, mammography, none of those are considered diagnostic. The only thing in traditional medicine considered diagnostic for cancer is to take a tissue sample and test it to see if it's cancerous. So if you are someone who feels like they need that 100% yes or no answer, you need the black or white yes or no, they may still consider a biopsy. That's what that biopsy is going to be able to give you. If you do that, the concern is that you want to try to prevent as much as possible what I think your friend was talking about, prevent as much as possible disrupting that tumor and then potentially spreading cancer cells into the bloodstream. So Modified Citrus Pectin, what I mentioned earlier, I always recommend that to my clients if they consider having a biopsy, because that Modified Citrus Pectin, great for decreasing inflammation, but then as we mentioned, also tries to take that stickiness away from cancer cells. Whereas on the flip side, if you choose to not do something like biopsy, that's where I was saying you're kind of putting drops in the bucket. You're getting multitudes of testing and you are making a conclusion yourself. You're saying, okay, my ultrasound looks suspicious, my thermography shows heat, my inflammatory markers are high. And if you feel comfortable making a conclusion and moving forward with that information, a lot of my clients will do that as well, because they want to avoid the biopsy as much as possible. Just again, depends on the person and what their needs are.
I like that you keep giving those examples and suggestions, that it's up to the person. In reality, we do have options. So it's really helpful that your line of work and people like you exist. Now I really want to ask you about your thermography. Since you had one breast that was hotter than the other, what did you do to get both those breasts back to a nice blue?
This was an early in my health and my learning about things that were good for health. So I was definitely not living a lifestyle that was beneficial. I wasn't eating correctly. I had lots of sugars in my diet. I had ice cream almost every night. Not that you can't have ice cream occasionally, right? That there's balance to everything, but I was definitely overdoing it. I was not exercising. I was not looking at my hormone balance. So I just basically implemented, kind of as I was learning about the 7 essentials, I started to implement them in my life. And so I found, for me personally, the type of diet that works best for me is kind of a mixture. I kind of paleo type, ketogenic type diet. So I tend to eat that way. Supplementation, I actually started supplementing for the first time in my life. I knew about supplements and I would take them sporadically when I was sick, but I wasn't on a regular supplement program. I would just use them when needed. Now I take them every day. So sulforaphane, the broccoli sprouts, I got my vitamin D levels high. I started taking curcumin. I also started implementing coffee enemas, which is a whole nother topic. It took me a while to get there. Dr. V told me, you cannot tell people to do coffee enemas and not do them yourself. And I was like, watch me. Yes, I can. So I was like, I will not do that. And then sure enough, she ended up talking me into it. And now I'm a big believer in them. So I started implementing coffee enemas. So yeah, I followed those 7 essentials. And over time, it took maybe 6 months to a year. But following up on that thermography, I saw that redness and that heat. And both of my, one was hotter than the other, but they were both hot. I saw that decrease.
Now we have to talk about enemas because I am a fan. It took me a while to do them as well. And I was like, does the bucket hold the, like, I couldn't figure out what the bucket was for. Now I know, I'm a seasoned enema expert. But tell me, why coffee enemas instead of just water enemas?
Oh, good question. Yeah, big difference. Water enemas realistically are just trying to cleanse out the lower part of your bowel. That's more used for like if you have constipation or issues like that. And I don't necessarily highly recommend those on a regular basis because your colon can get used to that over time. And it can also sometimes flush out some of your probiotic and prebiotic balances. Now, occasional use maybe, but not something on a regular basis. A coffee enema actually is not geared towards your colon at all. The purpose of a coffee enema is for liver detoxification. So sure, a coffee enema may affect the first 5 to 6 inches of your colon, but we know our colons are how many feet long, right? That's nothing compared to the length of our colon. So it's not really a colon cleanse. The coffee, the antioxidants, and the caffeine in the coffee open up the capillaries in the lower bowel and gets that caffeine and those antioxidants into the liver, and that actually helps detoxify the liver. It also stimulates the liver to go into what's called phase 2 detoxification, which is a big phase of detoxification. That's when our livers, especially for people and women, that's when our livers process our hormones. So that's a big piece of hormone balancing, is getting that liver into that phase 2 detoxification. And lastly, a big thing it does is it boosts glutathione production. Glutathione is a really interesting antioxidant. You don't get glutathione from food. Your body produces your own. So you have to support that glutathione production. And glutathione is a really protective antioxidant against many diseases, including cancer. And by doing those coffee enemas, that stimulates your liver to make more glutathione as well.
So amazing. I'm such a big fan. So I'm glad we got to talk about coffee enemas, because I don't think I've had anyone on the show where I've talked about coffee enemas yet.
Yeah, it's so funny. As a nurse, I did tons of enemas on people. That was an everyday thing, you know, but then once it became the thought of doing it myself, I was like, absolutely not. Like, no. So I totally get the hesitation for people who are out there. They're like, I will never, ever do that. I was there as well. And definitely never force yourself to do anything that you feel really opposed to, and do your research. Make sure it's something you think will benefit you. But I always tell my clients that 9 out of the 10 people that I tell about coffee enemas come back to me and say, I will never stop doing these. I love them. And then that 10th person is just like, okay, I felt good, but that was a lot, you know, but they get used to it and they're better. But 9 out of 10 times people are just, the moment you do them, you feel the difference. So it's always something doing your research on is worth to see if it's good for you. Yeah.
And how often should we be doing a coffee enema?
Yeah, you know, for my clients, I typically recommend, if they've never done them before, at least start off with weekly, see how you feel with weekly. If you're feeling good with that, and depending on what stage of healing you're on, if you're on a maintenance or a preventative journey, you might want to stick with that weekly. If you're someone who is actively under a cancer healing journey, you may want to consider going up to 3 times a week. Some of my clients do them daily, but that's very dependent on the person, depending on your needs. But somewhere between 1 to 3 times a week, I think, is a good place to start.
What's a safe amount of alcohol, and can we drink it during a cancer diagnosis?
Sure. Yeah. You know, this is another area where it's definitely all about balance. And again, I'm a pros and cons person. So I totally feel that joy and enjoying things is really important in a cancer healing journey. So I typically don't want people cutting things out that they're like, oh, this is like, I loved having a glass of wine with my husband once a week, you know. So there's some balance. Now, a lot of the research does point towards alcohol in general being a carcinogen. We know that when our livers process alcohol, it processes it into something called acetaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen. That's why you feel bad the next morning. Coffee enemas maybe help get that out. That's good. That's why you don't feel great the next morning, because you're dehydrated. You also have a lot of sugar in those alcohols, and your body is processing that acetaldehyde. So when you're on an active cancer healing journey, and I would say especially if you are undergoing conventional treatments, your body is already working with detoxifying from a lot of things. At that point, if it were me, I would say just give it a pause, take a break from it for now. If you have a glass of wine here or there as a treat to celebrate something, okay, let it be a low sugar wine like Malbec. An organic wine, that's another big thing. You know, wines, American wines, there's not a lot of regulations on how many pesticides can be put on our grapes. So Europeans may be a little bit better, but you can also do organic companies like Dry Farm Wines is a great resource. Yeah, so low sugar, organic, so stick with those kind of Malbecs that are the lower sugar options and make it a treat. Don't make it something that you're doing on a regular basis.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you're one of my favorite people that I've ever interviewed because I have some very hard and fast, like strict yes or no people, but I love the idea that you mentioned of having it be a treat. And also because if you feel like that food is going to make your diagnosis worse, there's that quantum element where it might. And I
Mm.
love Thai food. I love pizza. And when I eat it, I feel like I put this force around it that it's going to be the most nutrient food for me in that moment and to really enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe the same thing. I mean, I tell my clients all the time, if you're eating raw broccoli all day, but you're stressed out while you're eating it, you're not going to get the benefits of that broccoli. Whereas on the
Yes.
flip side, if you are happy and you're joyful, and let's say you choose to have a glass of wine or you have your Thai food, it may not have as big of an impact on you as it would otherwise. So I do think that mental aspect is really important. Being happy and joyful and laughing and enjoying your life is really important. So if cutting things out completely is going to take your joy, then let's find a balance that helps you kind of, be in the middle somewhere.
I love that. I love it so much. And also, it just reminded me when you said that of laughing and enjoying. I just bought this book called, I think it's called The Anatomy of an Illness or The Anatomy of
I've heard of that
Illness
before. Yeah.
or The Anatomy of a Disease. I forget what it is, but this guy cured his incurable disease by stimulating his vagus nerve, laughing. He was watching this Three Stooges as often as he could. So that's something that I feel like we need to bring back into our lives to just enjoy life.
Absolutely. Yeah. The vagal nerve, like you said, laughing stimulates it, humming, singing stimulates your vagal nerve. There are some really intense people who do the cold plunges. Do you do cold plunges?
I don't do them after I ovulate, but yes, I do them.
Yeah, and okay, you're braver than I am. I haven't gotten there yet. I just hate the cold so much. So I live in the southeast. I like the really warm, steamy weather. So the best I've gotten, the close I've gotten is turning my shower not super hot, but making it kind
Okay.
of cold at the end. So I'm getting there. But those cold plunges really great for vagal nerve stimulation. But yeah, I think that's a really important part. And that's, a part of the 7 essentials. If you remember, essential number 4 is your to heal your emotional wounds. And a part of that is being joyful and having fun and that vagal nerve stimulation. All the things that make us feel good are things that stimulate that vagal nerve for a reason. Something I'm not sure if you're familiar with is the heart math work or heart variability. Another one that's really great. So, focusing your energy in on your heart and keeping your heart really calm and in that parasympathetic mode, that tells the rest of your body that you're okay and you're safe. And I think those things are so important for everything, for prevention, but especially when you're on a cancer healing journey. You're going to feel like you're being attacked on a day-to-day basis, right? You've got to fight against that fight or flight response and really kind of work to stay in that parasympathetic, that is calm, response. So laughing, humming, singing, watching funny shows, coloring. I recently got a paint by number thing.
Okay.
Things that you just enjoy that are fun and easy are very important.
Those are such good examples, such good advice. Now, in the beginning of the show, we talked about how you also help men with breast cancer, that I think potentially is a myth. People maybe think men don't get it or they don't think as much about it. And then you also said you help with other cancers. So can you give us an overview of working with men and different kind of cancers?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a myth that men cannot get breast cancer. Men have breast tissue. They don't have as much as women do, but they have breast tissue. And so they absolutely can get breast cancer. And breast cancer is on the rise, not just for women, but also for men. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's getting more prevalent. And you have to think it makes sense, right? We live in a pro-estrogenic world where we are surrounded by chemical estrogens. As women, we're really strongly affected by that, but our men are as well. And so breast cancers are definitely on the rise for men. That's an interesting kind of point to think about as well. One of the issues why male breast cancer is a little, unique is that the methods for monitoring, standard methods are mammography, right? Men cannot have mammograms. So many times when men find their breast cancer, it's much later stage because they're not doing, what some other would be. So self breast exams are just as important for men as they are for women. Thermography is also helpful for men. All those tests I mentioned, like the inflammatory markers, all of those things can be helpful as well. Ultrasound if you feel like you need it. But again, it's definitely important for men to kind of follow up with that. But I typically say to people, cancer is cancer. And I know that there are some instances where there's some differences. I get it. There's nuances, but for the most part, a cancer cell works the same way, whether it's breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, whatever it is. A cancer cell works in a very similar way across the board. So implementing those basic things like the 7 essentials is beneficial for you no matter what healing journey you're on. Not even cancer. It can be autoimmune issues. It can be gut issues. It can be whatever it is. Those basics work for all of us, to try to help decrease inflammation and address those, important basic things. So we've worked with people with prostate cancer. We've worked with ovarian and uterine cancer. We've worked with rectal cancer. We've worked with a lot of people with many different types of pancreatic cancer. And we deal with people who go about things in many different ways. I've got a lot of people who do it natural. I've got a lot of people who do it conventional. And then most of my clients are in that middle ground, that integrative ground. So, there's a lot of options out there.
What kind of remedies or what can we do to mitigate any kind of damage from chemo?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. Something really easy to do is fasting. Dr. Valter Longo, you may have heard Dr. Valter, he did the Prolon fasting mimicking diet. He's big in that. So he did some studies and he found that when someone did a 48-hour fast prior to their chemotherapy, first of all, those cancer cells are starving for sugar. So they're really desperate to eat up whatever they can. That weakens them. And then also when you're fasting, your healthy cells tend to go into survival mode. So they're kind of ready to protect themselves from whatever is coming. So people who did that 48-hour fast prior to the chemotherapy tended to be more targeted towards the cancer cells. And people actually had less severe side effects with their chemotherapy treatments. So less nausea, less, fatigue, all of the above. So I tell my clients, 48 hours is great. Not everyone can implement 48 hours. So if you can't do the fasting mimicking diet, maybe that would help. Do a long intermittent fast, whatever you can do, but some type of fasting around that chemotherapy can be helpful. Another one that I love is mistletoe. Mistletoe is very synergistic with chemotherapy and interfere. Great for boosting your immune system. And we know, of course, one of the downsides of chemotherapy is it can't differentiate between your healthy cells and your bad cells, right? So it's going to kind of kill everything. So that mistletoe can help bolster your immune system prior to that treatment so that, there's more cells there so that it's not as much of a detriment. Vitamin C, vitamin D is very important. Curcumin can be helpful. There's all kinds of things. Modified Citrus Pectin, as I mentioned, chemotherapy has heavy metals in it. Yeah, chemotherapy definitely has a lot of heavy metals in it, so that's going to help with detoxing from those heavy metals. But again, weaken those cancer cells prior to the chemotherapy to make it more targeted.
These are such good examples. And I first learned about mistletoe in the book Sex, Lies, and Menopause. Have you read it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And I was like, why don't more people know about mistletoe?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a recent study, I don't know the exact numbers, but there was a recent study that showed that people who did conventional treatments alone versus people who did conventional treatments with mistletoe, the people who did the mistletoe had a longer lifespan, less of a better mortality rate than those who did not do the mistletoe. So mistletoe can be a big player. That's one of my favorites when it comes to chemotherapy.
Is there a certain way that you take it or recommend it?
Yeah, you definitely have to work with someone who can help you with dosing. So generally you take the mistletoe through an injection. That takes a little bit of bravery. You have to take the injection in your stomach or on your belly button, but work with someone who can help you with the dosing of it. It's all based off your response with the mistletoe, so it's very unique to each person. So I have my clients work with a naturopath or an integrative, someone who can kind of monitor and help them with the dosing.
It's so good. Yes. When I first heard about it, I was like, isn't that the thing where you just like hold
Yeah.
it over? But I feel like the wiser I get, I just had a birthday last month. So I feel like the wiser I get, I won't say older, but I'm like, these healing modalities are things that have been around for eons. The earth is always providing with ways to heal us.
Absolutely. We know about them maybe. There's another one that called morning glory. I don't know if you've ever heard of morning glory, but it's a very common weed, is what they call it in the South. Grows in your yard. It has anti-cancer properties. So, just literally grows in people's backyards, has a lot of, possibility of some anti-cancer properties. So yeah, these things are very accessible.
Well, and same with dandelion.
Oh yeah.
Dandelion is amazing. I remember seeing it in a supplement form and I was like, aren't those the yellow weeds that my family would like make us rip out when we were kids from the lawn?
Absolutely. Garlic, we cook with it every day. Lots of properties there.
I have a remedy guide on my website of things you can do when you're sick. And the first one is to eat garlic. Just eat raw garlic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Swallow a clove, whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about hormones. And I feel like they have so many beneficial properties, but I also feel women are really scared to take them because they're afraid they'll get breast cancer. Can you give us some insight on if, when, how can we still take hormones? Give us some insight, Deanne.
Yeah, never blindly take hormones, always test first. So I'll have some women come to me and say, hey, I'm having these symptoms. I'm just going to start taking some progesterone cream. And I always say, no, test, don't guess, make sure you're testing. So our favorite way of testing hormone levels is saliva hormone testing rather than blood testing. Saliva testing is going to look at hormones that are bioavailable, which means they haven't actually connected to a cell yet. So if you're going to balance something, that's what you're going to want to balance is those bioavailable hormones. So test your levels with a saliva hormone test first. And then from there, there's a big difference between hormone replacement therapy and bioidentical hormones. So if you go through a typical kind of pharmacy and do hormone replacement therapy, typically that's going to be synthetic hormones, synthetic estrogens. They've had to actually stop studies in the past on synthetic hormones, obviously, because people were getting breast cancer. They were getting heart disease, right? We know synthetic hormones. That's why we avoid them in our personal care products. We know synthetic hormones and estrogens can be really damaging. So a big difference there between those synthetic hormones and bioidentical hormones. So if you're going to do hormone replacement, make sure you test and retest, kind of monitor and make sure you're getting the right balance and make sure you're using a bioidentical type of replacement, not a synthetic hormone replacement.
Yes, such a good example. Okay, so let's say we've been on hormones, we're feeling good. Let's say a woman has been diagnosed with breast cancer and now she's really scared to continue taking her, let's say topical, maybe DHEA, progesterone. Can she still take those hormones?
It depends on the situation. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that would go into that. If you're someone who, is working, again, testing and not guessing, make sure you're testing your levels, make sure you can methylize your hormones correctly with a Dutch test. It also depends on what area of your healing you're in. If you're someone who feels like they need to get ahead of their cancer growth first, then you might want to wait. If you're someone who's in a maintenance place, then you might consider yourself safe too. So there's just a lot of factors that kind of go into whether you would feel comfortable with that or not. On the alternative side, there's a lot of doctors that feel like bioidentical hormones can be protective against breast cancer and breast cancer development. So it definitely depends on the approach you're taking. Some people feel comfortable. There's kind of two areas. There's the stop your body from making hormones, the blocking kind of area. That's like bringing the fire truck out to the house. The house is on fire. You've got to put the fire out. You need a big fire truck to hose everything down. And then the balancing hormones is a little bit more of a gentle, controlled approach. So depending on kind of where you are in your healing journey, that might be a factor you take into consideration, depending on, how much of the fire you need to put out, so to speak.
You've mentioned methylizing hormones a few times. I've heard of methylated vitamins, but can you walk me through what are methylated hormones?
Yeah, sure. Methylation is basically a word that just means metabolism. It's how our bodies take large particles of something and break it down into small particles so that we can get rid of it. So we methylize all kinds of things. We methylize toxins. We methylize foods down into nutrients. We methylize hormones down into metabolized hormones. So I'll take estrogen for an example. In order for your body to get rid of a particle of estrogen, it takes 4 or 5 steps to break that particle down into smaller particles. So that's what estrogen methylation is. And because it's such a complex, thing. It's very complex to methylize something. A lot of us have breaks in our methylation processes. Speaking of genetics, a lot of us also have MTHFR mutations. That means we don't methylize as well. Not always, right? But we have a tendency to not methylize as well as people who don't have those mutations. So yeah, testing with Dutch test is really important. There's really simple things you can help support your methylation pathways. Coffee enemas help. We know that. The broccoli sprouts, DIM is another really great one. DIM comes from cruciferous vegetables. DIM also helps your body to process your hormones in the right way.
All right. I have 3 rapid fire questions.
Okay. Uh-oh. Let me take a sip of my green tea first.
Yes. Take a break. If someone is diagnosed with breast cancer, they should never eat soy products again.
Oh, not always true. No. There are situations when soy can be helpful, especially fermented soy. There's a product called Haelen. It's a fermented soy drink. It's really helpful for even ER positive cancers. The difference is that it's a phytoestrogen. So there's a big difference between phytoestrogens and xenoestrogens. Plant estrogens are more protective, whereas those chemical estrogens are really aggressive and strong. That was maybe too long of an answer for a quick rapid fire, but
I like it. Well, I think maybe that one needed a bit of an explanation because I feel like soy is such a hot topic where it's like, I can never have it again. But hearing that it's fermented and I'm guessing organic is
absolutely
beneficial.
Yeah. Well, and same with edamame beans. Edamame beans are also, it's a whole food source of soy. Again, a phytoestrogen. So, if it's something that's overly processed, really processed like tofu, I might make that a balanced intake of, maybe not a daily, just because it's processed food. It takes a lot of processing to get it there. But something that's like a whole food source like Haelen or edamame beans, that's something that can have some protective properties.
Okay. Next question. If you have the BRCA gene, you need to remove your breast.
Not always. I mean, again, it depends on what's going to make that person feel the most comfortable, right? So some of us live with that fear and we can never get over that fear. And if that's something that helps, then some people make that decision. But like we talked about, your genes are not your destiny. What your genes say can be influenced by environmental factors and supplementation. So there's definitely, lots of things you can do to upregulate that protective property of that BRCA gene. And there's a lot of people who have the BRCA gene who never get cancer. So, it's just up to each person as to what they think is going to make them feel the most comfortable going forward.
Third rapid fire question. I don't have health insurance. This is the route my doctor wants to take me on. I have no other option than to go down this route.
Go down conventional route, you mean?
Yes.
You always have options. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but you always have options. It can definitely be expensive to go down a natural healing journey. It's a lot of money that goes into that, but your health is worth it. So again, I would say, first of all, don't make a quick decision. I've said that before. Take a break, take a deep breath, think about your options, and then figure out what's doable for you. The good thing about some natural medicines is there's some that are expensive. There's some that are really helpful, and then same thing with integrative. You don't have to work with an integrative oncologist. You can work with an oncologist yourself, and then you can also work with a coach or a naturopath to help kind of balance it out. So, just kind of take a break, take a step back, what is doable for you. I mean, your money is definitely a part of the finances. It's a resource you have to pay attention to, but there's a lot of easy, free, cheap things you can do at home. I mean, we talked about garlic. You can swallow a clove of garlic and that's great for your immune system. There's a lot of things out there that are doable.
I feel like I've asked you so many questions and you've done a great job at answering all of them. So I feel like this is the fun part where I get to ask you, Deanne, can you share a story with me of someone that you've worked with who overcame breast cancer?
Dr. V herself, read her book. She's done it twice, not just once. She's done it twice. I think she's one of the best stories. I mean, we've definitely worked with a lot of people who have overcome and done it in many different ways. But Dr. V is such a role model to look for people who are looking for an inspirational story. And, she shared when she had her second healing journey that some people, she thought some people was going to think that was like a failure on her part. But I think really it just taught a lot of us that, cancer is really a dynamic thing to deal with. Don't let yourself, if you've had cancer before, kind of give up on some of those lifestyle changes that you made when you had it. stay on top of your healing on a regular basis, and again, the fact that she had it a second time and was still able to heal herself, it just goes to show that it's definitely doable.
I love that. That's really helpful that you shared that. I'm also curious to learn, are there any scams or anything that we should be staying away from where people say, this one thing will work, just do this?
To be honest, typically if I read anything that says this is the only thing you should take, I tend to stay away from it. I think that's kind of a telltale sign. We're all so unique. We're all so individual. What it takes to heal each and every one of us is different from the next person. You can't just follow in the footsteps of someone else and have the same results always. So yeah, for the most part, if there's something that says all you need to do is take this one supplement, I tend to stay away from those things. That tends to be kind of a cookie cutter approach, and we're all trying to avoid that. So yeah, it's about looking to see what your body needs the most and individualizing it for each person.
Okay. Well, Deanne, as we wrap up this show, I always ask my guests the same closing question, which is, what haven't I asked you that you'd like my listeners to know?
One thing I would like to share is if you have someone who is looking to do some type of an integrative approach and they're working with an oncologist and their doctor tells them don't take supplements. That's very common for doctors to say that. And I share this because it comes from a personal experience as well. I was a nurse. I was there. I said that to people. I've been there. And what it really comes from is it's not their fault, but there is a huge lack of education in the medical world on herbs and supplements and natural medicine. And so they are teaching and talking based off of what they have been taught. So I'm a big believer in full transparency with your doctors. I never encourage someone to hide what they're taking or eating or supplementing with from their doctors. I think it's really important that they know what you're doing. But remember that you are the one in control. Do your research. And if you have clear evidence that shows something is supportive of the treatment you're choosing to do, bring that research to your doctor and say, I'm going to choose to do this for this reason. I want to share with you why I'm doing it. That way they know what you're doing, but also maybe you're educating them a little bit as well. So don't get afraid if your doctor's kind of first reaction is no, take no supplements whatsoever. That's a normal reaction. They typically just say that when they don't know, and that's okay. That's just their defense mechanism. So do the research, bring the research to them. Full transparency, of course, but remember that you're the one in control of how you want to heal.
Yes, I love that. I love that so much. And I also probably have one more question because I know we spoke a little bit about books, but I know Dr. D has a couple books, but do you have some favorite books to recommend?
I love The Metabolic Approach to Healing. I love Jane McKellen's book, How to Start Cancer. I actually have my bookshelf right here. I should glance and take The Tapping Solution. Tapping Solution by Nick Ortner. I love that one as well. Let's see. The Placebo Effect, Joe Dispenza. That one's a really great one. Getting Well Again. That one's kind of an old one, but a good one. There has to be at least one more. Let's see. And I am cheating. I'm looking at my bookcase. I also love The Success Principles, Jack Canfield.
Ooh, okay. So good. So we can I think one of the only ones you didn't mention was, and I forget the title of it, but it's a book by Jim Kwik, and his work is so amazing. And one of his stories is that, are you familiar with Jim?
No, I haven't heard of it, no.
So he teaches people how to read faster and become better learners. And he said one of the motivational sources for his work was that one of his students had found his work and her mom was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And she said, I want to learn as much as I can. Can you teach me how to speed read, how to read books faster? And she read so many books and implemented so many different lifestyle modalities, very similar to what we spoke about today. And her mom overcame the terminal brain cancer diagnosis that she had. So that's one where I would say, and again, I'm not a coach like you, but I would say if you are potentially very overwhelmed, pick up Jim Kwik's book if you're wanting to learn as much as you can.
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up. That's awesome. Thanks for the suggestion.
I'll send it to you. Well, Deanne, it's been so lovely speaking with you. Tell my listeners where they can go to learn more about you in the program.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Breastcancerconqueror.com is kind of our home base. We have lots of different programs on there. We have private coaching. We also have group coaching. And we have a new program that we're using as well, Survive and Thrive, which is for people who are interested in integrative care as well. So breastcancerconqueror.com if you want any more information.
Amazing. We'll make sure to point people in the right direction. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Ashley. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening today. Quick shout out on Instagram or sharing this podcast with a friend can make a positive difference. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, a great way to support the show is by leaving me a review. You can also support my work by using any of the affiliate links in my show notes or by visiting my website, ashleydaily.com. This podcast is presented for educational and exploratory purposes only. The published content is not intended to be used for diagnosing or treating any illnesses, diseases, or disorders. Those responsible for this show disclaim any responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of this information presented by myself or my guests. Please consult with your healthcare provider before using any products or services referenced in this podcast. The content here is for informational purposes only. Episodes on the Welcome to Wellness podcast may at times cover sensitive topics, including, but not limited to, depression, suicide, 5G, nootropics, circumcision, birth control, the Women's Health Initiative, the use of plants medicine, abortion, geoengineering, terrorism, gender, AI, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You are advised to refrain from listening to this podcast if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. However, if these topics interest you, you just may have found your tribe. The information or opinions expressed on the Welcome to Wellness show are solely the views of the individuals involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and the guests can change at any time. The views of my guests are solely their views, and the Welcome to Wellness show does not accept responsibility for them. Any action you take based on the information contained within this show is strictly at your own risk. The Welcome to Wellness host, Ashley Daly, will not be liable for any losses or damages in connection with the use of this podcast. You should take all necessary steps to ascertain the information you receive in this podcast is correct and has been verified. None of the guests or contributors on the Welcome to Wellness podcast will be responsible for your use of the information contained therein. Under no circumstances will the Welcome to Wellness show or my affiliates, partners, suppliers, licenses, or guests appearing on the show be liable for any direct or indirect consequences or damages arising from your ability or inability to access this podcast. All intellectual property rights belong to me, Ashley Daly, and include, but are not limited to, the copyright and any other rights in the design. You are permitted to use the Welcome to Wellness podcast for personal use, but not commercial use without a license. You may not make recordings. If you breach these terms, you lose the right to access the Welcome to Wellness podcast, and you must destroy or return any copies of the recordings you've made. Guests on the Welcome to Wellness podcast may at times provide information on or read extracts from third-party copyrighted work. The Welcome to Wellness podcast does not provide any medical or professional advice within these episodes. If you take any action or inaction as a result of the content you consume from the Welcome to Wellness podcast, this is based solely on your decision, and the Welcome to Wellness podcast, Ashley Daly, and my guests cannot be held responsible or liable for any of the consequences of such action or inaction. Thank you for listening.